Франсуа will want to start.
It's okay, I think we're just time. Issue have been...
Хвилина. Ще одна хвилина. Окей. Добрий день. Сьогодні ми поговоримо про гуманітарну допомогу. Поняття, яке не нове для нас, тому що, на жаль, починаючи з 2014 року, ми знаємо про нього не з книжок, а знаємо на практиці. Ми її отримуємо, ми нею користуємося, ми надаємо цю допомогу. Але гуманітарна допомога – це не тільки фінансова, матеріальна допомога, це про солідарність. І ми допомагаємо одне одному, особливо під час криз, під час стихійних лих. От про це сьогодні і розкаже Франсуа. Я рада представити Франсуа Грюневальда, дослідника французької групи URD, яка займається проблемами, пов'язаними з гуманітарною сферою. Ну, можливо, Франсуа ще і захоче про Groupe URD розказати, але я хотіла б сказати про Франсуа. Дуже великий друг нашого університету України. Франсуа підтримує Україну у Франції. Він мені час від часу надсилає фото, де він у касці з прапором йде площами французьких міст на підтримку України. Мій особистий друг, і я пишаюся, дуже задоволена, що він сьогодні представляє результати свого дослідження, хоча ми лише побачимо, мабуть, вершинку айсберга. Франсуа знає набагато більше, але те, що він у ці 2 години вкладе, ну, зараз і побачимо. Будь ласка, Франсуа.
Окей. Дякую. Дуже дякую. Thank you very much for coming. For me, it's very important to work with this university. It's the time of the war, but we have to start building the future now.
Yes.
Et le futur, c'est vous, la jeunesse d'Ukraine.
Французькою ні, не розуміємо. In French we don't understand.
Oh, I was speaking French?
One
So,
sentence.
okay, so the future is you, the youth of Ukraine. So for me, it's very important to do this teaching with the help of Irina and yesterday with Evgeny. Today, we'll speak about humanitarian action in a world which is very complicated. And this world became even more complicated after 9/11 and the bombing of New York Tower. In addition to that, the war in Ukraine has also obliged a reshaping of the world. And humanitarian action is taking place in this new context where you have a lot of opportunities, but a lot of dangers. So this is what we will talk about. I work with Groupe URD. It's a research center in France.
Це місце, де працює Франсуа, і він, власне, є засновником цієї групи URD.
Yeah. And we work around what we call the learning cycle. I saw the sentence describing the Yaroslava Mundry University. The future belongs to those who are learning. And for us, it has been also something very important for 30 years. Okay. So for us, the learning starts in the field, where we evaluate, we look at what's happening in the field, and from them, we transform this knowledge into a capital of knowledge. And then we organize training and then we elaborate tools, and then we recycle them again in the action. So we are in this kind of learning system from the field to the theory, back to the field. Понятно?
Все, що вони займаються, все, чим воно проходить певне коло, яке вказано у нас.
So we work nearly in all the countries where we have conflict, from North Korea to Colombia. We work in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Africa, in all those countries. We do a lot of evaluation.
Держави, де проходять діяльність.
Yeah. And we don't stay in office, we go to the field to see the situation, the real situation. We write reports, we organize training, so we do a lot of different type of activities. We have one sentence is important for us. And this sentence is understand complexity and diversity and become friends with them. Most people, in fact, they don't like complexity. They say, oh, too complicated. For us, we think the world is complicated and we have to understand it and to become friends with complexity. Now we go to the subject. There are too many disasters on Earth. Many wars. These are images taken from Afghanistan. Many disasters, like hurricanes, earthquake. Some of them are named natural disasters because they are linked to natural causes. But in fact, earthquake himself is not a disaster. Earthquake is an event. And it becomes a disaster when it meets a city.
Каже про стихійні лиха, зокрема про землетруси багато, хоча Франсуа каже, що землетрус не, тобто є природні лиха, а землетрус він не називає, я так зрозуміла, стихійним лихом. Earthquake is not disaster?
Earthquake is an event.
Просто подія.
If the earthquake takes place in the desert,
якщо землетрус трапляється у пустелі,
it's not a disaster.
Це не стихійне лихо.
If the earthquake takes place in a city which has been well prepared for earthquake, there are some problems, but it's not a disaster.
Це каже не стихійне лихо.
But if the earthquake takes place in a city which is not prepared,
якщо воно трапляється у місті, яке не готове до землетрусу,
then it becomes a disaster.
Оце вже стихійне лихо.
So earthquake in Tokyo, things are moving, but no disaster.
Там хитаються дома, будинки, але це не стихійне лихо.
But earthquake in Turkey, not prepared,
А в Туреччині
100,000 dead. 100,000 dead.
100,000.
100,000 dead people.
1,000, так, окей.
So,
Тобто загинуло багато людей через землетрус у Туреччині.
so in fact, at the end, war, an earthquake, destruction, they all look the same. But that's not very important. One of the characteristics of disaster and war is they create population displacement.
Про наступне частинка – це про переселенців, переміщених осіб і про біженців.
And you have seen that a lot in Ukraine since 2022 and already since 2014.
Дуже багато переселенців після початку збройного конфлікту в Україні.
And so in the field, one we observe often is it's always the same answer without looking at the difference of the context.
В різних контекстах, але ми дивимося на одні й ті ж, задаємо одні й ті ж запитання.
Which means very often the response is not appropriate. It's not adequate.
Ну, неадекватні.
So we have to see how to improve that.
Як це впливає? Ми дивимося, як це впливає в тій або іншій ситуації.
So to understand the different elements, there are few critical issues.
Для розуміння ситуації ми задаємося або виділяємо декілька проблем важливих.
One, of course, is the security of the population and of the aid actors.
Безпека населення.
One is the respect of the humanitarian spirit, we want to help people.
Повага і гуманітарний дух.
And one is to make sure that the humanitarian aid is appropriate and good quality.
Адаптація і якість.
So these are I think, three critical elements.
Три критичних елементи. Це зрозуміло.
What is difficult is there is often in conflict you have what we call the culture of war. Culture of war.
Культура війни.
So at the end, people get used to work with, to see militaries everywhere, to have guns everywhere.
Наприклад, люди бачать дуже багато навколо себе військових, зброї.
And culture of war can become very dangerous.
Це дуже опасно. Небезпечно, дякую.
Especially because often the culture of war means a lot of oppression on women.
Це стосується також великої кількості жінок.
Soldiers are the worst chauvinists we can find.
Солдати виступають як шовіністи по відношенню до...
Мужской шовініст. Soldiers, they are very brutal, often with women.
Вони дуже грубі відносно жінок, так.
And we see that a lot in with the way the Russian soldiers are doing with Ukrainian women.
Страшні речі, які робили і роблять російські солдати відносно жінок.
And this is part of the culture of war.
Це одна з частин культури війни.
And this is very dangerous.
Дуже небезпечно.
We also have to look at how things are sensitive to culture.
Культура, чуттєва культура і частина...
Something, a peacekeeping operation has not yet been done in Ukraine now.
Це, що тут показано, воно не було в Україні.
But in many countries, the United Nations send peacekeeping mission.
Але у багатьох державах ООН ветере. What is peacekeeping operation? Хто знає, peacekeeping?
Peacekeeping, it's the United Nations troops, the blue helmet. Хто знаєш?
Англічані.
Blue helmets.
Blue helmet, это
United Nations.
Это голубые берети, блакитні берети.
Voilà. So often
Це місії ООН по збереженню миру.
Blue helmet in many countries have been doing a lot of difficulties with the population.
Дуже багато вони роблять у різних країнах для збереження популяції населення.
So they are not yet in Ukraine.
Але не в Україні.
One of the things that people often don't understand, especially the international aid actors, sometimes they don't understand that culture have what we call the gesture of welcoming people.
Багато міжнародних гравців не розуміють взагалі тієї ситуації, так, що яка відбувається.
In many countries, you arrive, you have to say hello, you have to say thank you, you have to ask questions about the family, you have to, and people offer you water and tea. These are gesture of to welcome people.
Я прослухаю.
So,
Багато країн не розуміють жесту
Доброї волі.
доброчинності, добропорядності.
and often the humanitarian actors, they don't care about that. International humanitarian actors.
І багато міжнародних організацій взагалі за це не приймаються.
They want to do things fast, fast, fast.
Вони кажуть, давайте швидше.
And they don't, they, for them, this gesture of welcoming people, they don't understand them.
Ну, і вони так не сприймають цей жест. Гостинність, так. Ага.
And this is the beginning of a lot of difficulties.
Це початок великої кількості складнощів, труднощів.
Because it creates a feeling of distrust.
Вони відчувають недовіру.
So trust between humanitarian actors and the population is very important.
А довіра для населення – це дуже важливо.
If there is no trust, nothing can work.
Якщо вони не довіряють, то нічого не буде. Без довіри.
There are many different actors in humanitarian aid.
Дуже багато акторів у допомозі, даємо допомогу.
Including the military.
В тому числі військові.
So we have in fact different words have to live together.
Різні світи.
Different categories of actors have to.
Різні категорії взагалі зустрічаються тих, хто допомагає.
You have the military, you have the civilian, you have the national authorities, you have the local NGO. They are all part of a very complicated system.
Дуже велика взагалі система, це військові, це місцеві організації, це НГО, неурядові громадські організації, цивільні.
So this system, people at all those different organizations are sometimes in the same place.
Ця система дуже спрощується більшістю людей.
And this sometimes creates complicated situation.
І це complicated. Складна ситуація. Складна ситуація.
Yeah. Difficult situation.
Складна ситуація.
Because people don't understand each other.
Люди не розуміють одне одного.
One of the other elements is often the population itself has been under a lot of stress and is traumatized.
Дуже багато людей, населення страждають від травм, від стресу. І це ще один аспект, про який би Франсуа хотіла розповісти.
And stress and traumatism is something very important.
Стрес і травматизм дуже важливі.
In Ukraine, one of my projects is working on ecotherapy.
В Україні у Франсуа один із проєктів – це екотерапія.
Коні за здоров'я.
Коні для здоров'я.
So how to use horses to help people to get through the traumatism.
Як за допомогою коней люди можуть позбавитися травм психологічних.
And I work with a center in Kharkiv, another center in Kropivnitsky.
Він буває у цих конячих центрах під Харковом, в Кропивницькому.
And you can really see how the animals and the human can help each other.
Ну і дуже приємно дивитися, як люди і коні тримаються разом і одужують.
One of the complicated type of project is food aid.
Один із аспектів, один із напрямів проєкту – це допомога продуктам харчування.
So a lot of programs have taken place in Ukraine of having food distribution and canteen for the people.
Ну, це розподіл продуктів харчування по столовку, по їдальні.
Yeah. And of course, there are also very important program on cash distribution.
Дуже важлива програма – це розподіл грошей.
Another type of program which is very important in humanitarian aid is health.
Дуже важлива програма здоров'я.
And of course, in Ukraine, you have a lot of those programs for wounded people, for old people, for health.
Дуже багато програм про здоров'я. Франсуа, you are very understandable. Maybe I will sit and hear you.
Okay.
If something will be not understandable, I
You can.
translate, because you are very clear.
Is it okay if okay, I try to speak slowly?
Без мого перекладу, ви ж розумієте, правильно?
Okay.
Тут ще мої інтерпретації додаються.
In many countries, there was no health system before the war, and people were using traditional health system. And of course, traditional health system, the international agency, they just don't understand it. So again, we have a lot of difficulties between the international aid agencies coming from abroad and the local society, and a lot of difficulties and a lot of risk of misunderstanding. So we are trying to see how to work with that.
Вони там не розуміють нас тут.
Of course, there are, in many contexts, you have the issue of religion. You have the Muslims, you have the Orthodox, you have the Christian, you have and in some contexts, it makes things difficult. In part of Africa, where you have Christian and Islamists, you have conflict. Even sometimes between Islamic groups, you have conflicts between the Shiite and the Sunni. So religion is a complicated story. And I know in Ukraine, you also have this issue of the Moscow Orthodox and the Kiev Orthodox and the Catholic. And this is part of the element of the complexity of the situation. What we call gender issues, the issue that relate to women, but also to other genders. It's something which is also very complicated. In each country, there are ways, and in each culture, there are ways to deal with women issues, with trans issues, with different kind of groups, and this requires a lot of cultural sensitivity.
В кожній країні є свої якісь культурні особливості і чутливості.
And it's even more in Ukraine. I think Ukrainian women are strong and outspoken, so we can have this discussion. But in part of other countries where people are under the veil and they cannot speak, this makes things difficult. We don't have that problem in Ukraine.
Українські жінки, вони такі сильні, вони бойові, в той час, як в деяких країнах жінка навіть слова не може промовити.
But in Ukraine, there is another issue. A lot of places, the men are in the front line and the women are trying to hold to keep the family together, and it's another type of problem.
В Україні є інші проблеми.
So I say the men are in the front line, or sometimes dead in the front line, and the women are alone in the back.
Чоловіки знаходяться на фронті, а жінки утримують тил.
And this makes things also difficult for the women.
Це дуже важко для жінки.
We also have, in many countries, we have generation gaps. So you have the old people, the young people, the intermediary people. These are different cultures sometimes.
В більшості державах це проблема покоління між там старшими, молодшими, середніми.
And for example, in Ukraine, you have the old people who are used to the Soviet style.
Старі люди використовують радянський стиль.
You have the younger generation which is used to the transition.
А ви вже свої традиції встановлюєте.
And then you have even the younger tradition where what we call the digital natives, they were born with computer in the bones.
Яка це близнітні люди прокинулися,
So,
живете з ними.
so to have this kind of interconnection is complicated, and to take that into account in evaluation program requires a lot of attention.
І власне, такі програми також уделяють увагу, як знайти точки дотику між різними поколіннями. Як об'єднати їх.
Yeah. Someday I was in Kharkiv Park,
В неділю він був у якомусь з наших парків.
and I had very, very interesting discussion with an old man.
Так, він був у саду Шевченка, мені здається. Так.
The old man doing with bandura.
З бандуристом спілкувався, сиділи вони там на лавочці з ним. Так.
And he told me a lot of the difficulty he has to discuss with the young people.
І бандурист сказав, що він має дуже багато проблем у спілкуванні з молодим поколінням. Зараз там слова бандуриста.
So it's so generation is a very important issue.
Дуже велика проблема поколінська, міжпоколінська.
So we have different kind of critical issues now. But of very important questions.
Важливі запитання, які ставляться взагалі.
Especially when we talk about reconstruction.
Зокрема, щодо реконструкції.
Are we reconstructing walls?
Стіни.
Yeah, walls.
Реконструкції стін.
Are we reconstructing life?
Чи ми маємо реконструювати життя?
Are we reconstructing societies?
Або реконструювати суспільство?
Are we reconstructing economy?
Або економіку?
And are we reconstructing a future for the young generation?
Або відбудовувати майбутнє для наступних поколінь.
And this, I think, is very important debate in the health sector.
Це дуже багато дебатів в секторі допомоги.
And of course, it is one of the critical elements now in the discussion about Ukraine.
Ну і це, звісно, що стосується України.
So, one of the difficulty of the humanitarian sector.
Одна із проблем гуманітарного сектору.
So sometimes they believe they know what to do. There's nice. You see, the actors of this international aid system, they believe they know what to do.
Міжнародні організації, вони думають, що вони знають, як ми маємо щось робити.
And when they ask the population, sometimes they get surprised because what they think is useful is not what the population wants.
Так, але якщо ми запитаємо просто населення, чи це було корисно, чи треба це, вони...
So we really see two approaches.
Декілька підходів.
Those who arrive, they know what to do,
Вони знають, що робити,
and they try to impose the program.
і намагаються запровадити програму.
And those who are more listening
Є ті, хто слухають просто,
and trying to say, I don't know what to do, tell me what you need.
Я не знаю, вони намагаються прислухатися і сказати, скажіть, що я маю робити. Тобто одні знають, що робити, а інші прислухаються вже до людей і питають, що треба робити.
And there is a clash between those two approaches.
І це два протилежні підходи.
And when I came in Ukraine in June, July 2022,
Коли Франсуа був в Україні у червні-липні 2022 року,
I saw the humanitarian aid arriving like a big bulldozer.
Допомога, як
The aid system arriving like a big bulldozer.
Система допомоги, вона нагадувала йому великий бульдозер.
And the Ukrainians said, oh, please listen to us. We don't want that.
Так, не робіть цього, так.
And it was very difficult for both the aid system and the Ukrainians.
Була дуже велика різниця між допомогою і тим, що відбувалося взагалі в Україні.
Just one example.
Один приклад.
The humanitarian system has developed very sophisticated mechanism for cash distribution.
Статистика механізм?
Complicated.
Складний механізм, дуже складний механізм розподілу грошей.
For cash distribution.
Yeah.
And they didn't listen to the Ukrainian who say, hey, we have already a different system in place in Ukraine.
Хтось сказав, що ми вже маємо...
So the Ukrainians say,
Українці казали,
we have system in place, why don't you use them?
ми вже маємо свою систему, чому ви її не використали?
Like the system that was put in place for the COVID distribution. In Ukraine, they established IPAMAGA for during the COVID, for cash distribution.
Франсуа, якщо я не розумію, я думаю, можливо, хтось розуміє. Так. Під час ковіду
During the COVID, yeah, the Ukrainians have established a system
державна система України
for cash distribution, cash transfer.
Передавала вже гроші.
The IPAMAGA, I think it was the name.
Допомагала.
So it was the name of this system.
Назва цієї
It
системи.
was a Ukrainian system, I think, IPAMAGA.
Є допомога.
Є
допомога. Є допомога.
So it was a system for cash.
Це якраз є допомога, система роздачі розподілу цих грошей.
So the big discussion was why international system want to impose the system, their own system, while there is already a system in Ukraine.
Питання таке, навіщо ще придумувати велосипед, якщо вже в нас він є. Тобто у нас є оця система, є допомога, навіщо ще запроваджувати іншу, яку там міжнародні організації хочуть зробити.
Because it was very expensive for the international organization to set up their own system.
Це дуже важко для міжнародних організацій запроваджувати свою систему, власне.
While there was already a Ukrainian system in place functioning very well.
Українська система дуже добре працює.
Most people from the international agencies, they came from Africa, the place where there is no administration, no local organization.
Більшість держав більшість міжнародних організацій, які йдуть до Африки та до інших країн, вона не має певної системи і не має своїх власних систем.
And they arrived in Ukraine, municipalities were still there, the state was strong, and the Ukrainian society was very strong.
Але в Україні суспільство більш стійке і дуже там складна система, там муніципальна, державна система загальна.
So a lot of difficulties.
Дуже багато.
At the end, what comes as a critical element is the need for justice.
Дуже великі проблеми – це проблеми, пов'язані із правом.
And we see that coming for Ukraine with all discussion on war crimes, ecocide, genocide.
Це проблеми, пов'язані з кримінальними злочинами, з екоцидом.
And this will become one of the critical elements for the international discussion on Ukraine in the future.
Це і залишиться проблемним запитанням в Україні в майбутньому.
So now we look at what to do. So in humanitarian aid, you have always the first part, which is doing goodie distribution.
Розподіл, так.
So there is always the first part in the aid, which is the relief part.
Перша частина допомоги – це полегшення.
And the second part is what to do after.
І друге, що робити після того. Полегшення, зменшення в даному контексті.
So it is very important to clarify some words.
І треба визначитися з певними поняттями для розуміння цього.
Emergency is an issue related to time.
Терміновість, яка має відношення до часу.
So emergency is something that has to be done very fast.
Дуже швидко треба. Emergency або швидкість дуже швидко.
Humanitarian is related to a context where people are in very bad situation.
Це якраз треба розуміти контекст, коли люди знаходяться в дуже поганій ситуації.
And then you have what we call relief, which is the assistance that is given.
Relief, полегшення.
Relief is like the.
I understand, полегшення.
Yeah, it's also what is relief is linked to distribution of goods.
Relief в даному полегшення або зменшення там шкоди, розподіл продуктів харчування.
And then you have all the technical sectors on water, on shelter, on health, which are linked to more complicated content.
Також одним із понять, що таке, там, які стосуються води, які стосуються прихисту та іншого.
So when you will be reading documents on humanitarian aid, you will see those different terms. And it's very important to understand what they really mean. It's okay?
Yes.
Okay.
They
Now-
understand without my translation.
Hmm?
They understand without my
Okay.
translation.
So you can rest. So one of the difficulty is linked to what we call the donors, so the countries that give money for humanitarian aid. So you have the humanitarian donors, you have the development donors, and you have in the middle a mechanism which is not well funded, the intermediary programs which go from pure humanitarian aid and pure development. There is something in the middle which has sometimes difficulties to be financed. When we go to post-crisis, we normally see all the refugees and displaced going back to their place of origin. Some go back, some will not go back. We see also military who have to be demobilized on going back to civil life. And this will be a big challenge in Ukraine. Especially,
Проблеми будуть і з поверненням біженців, одна з проблем. Друга – це коли наші військові почнуть повертатися додому, також мобілізовані будуть повертатися додому.
when I was in Kropivnicki last week, I was working with, there was a national conference on veterans. And I could discuss with many of them. For them, they have gone through 2 years of war without seeing too much of the family. And in fact, they're afraid to go to civil life because it's another chance. They want to do that, but they're afraid, especially those who have handicapped, because when you have the 2 legs cut, going back to your family is difficult. So this would be a very, very, very critical problem for Ukraine, the management of all the veterans. And I saw in America and the US where they are dealing very badly with veterans. So the guys are very poor, they are kind of abandoned by the society. But Ukraine, but it's a small number compared to the global population. While in Ukraine, it's a large number. It's the number of people who have been in the front line, who have been affected, wounded. It's a big number. And they will have to be integrated into the life. And this will be a big challenge. This is again, I come with my horses.
Коли вони будуть повертатися, це дуже буде великий виклик. Ну, нехай там їх не так багато там порівняно з усієї планети, але будуть, тоді вони прийдуть до коней, яких Франсуа Грюневальда.
For physical and psychological rehabilitation.
Відновлювати фізичну і психологічну форму.
One of the big problems will be demining and managing all the unexploded ordnance. It was a big problem in Afghanistan, in Cambodia, and it will be a big problem in Ukraine. Managing all those mines and that would be very, very serious difficulty. And of course, we have all the how to finance all those things. Will the donor be supporting Ukraine? Are the donors involved in supporting the economy, the state, the demobilization, the return of the refugees? That would be a big challenge. It is normally a big challenge, and it will be a big challenge also for Ukraine. Okay, I will change that. So before, for a long time, we thought that the crisis would follow that curve. So it go from development, crisis, and then rehabilitation, reconstruction, and development. This was called the continuum. So continuum theory. But in fact, situations are much more complicated. Crises don't go through the normal curve. They do all kinds of funny things, like when they go to the Loch Ness Monster type of curve, crisis, no crisis, 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 coming back. Sorry. And even sometimes in the same context, you have peace, war, and situation in between in one country. It's what we did have a bit in Ukraine. We have the front line from Odessa to well, yeah, Odessa, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Sumy, and back to the three sister border with Belarus. So this is war zone. And then you have the second zone, which is kind of few hundred kilometers around that. And then you have the inside, which is more quiet, even if the Russians are still bombing. So we have also that kind of things, and it becomes what we call the contiguum. So continuum, we have the evolution over time. Contiguum is in the same context, you have different type of situation. And of course, this is much more complicated to manage.
Теорія континууму – це коли там еволюція самого процесу, а континуум – це розподіляється по секторам, по певним.
What we know is we have seen over the last 30, 40 years difficult situations of post-war. We have seen very fragile peace very fragile, and we have seen also system with no war, no peace. Like a bit in Ukraine, the 2014 agreement was kind of no peace, no war. Now we are back in full war, and the question is what will come next, and that's one of the very complicated questions. So it's all kind of a pyramid, where at the top you have the emergency, and then you go to sectorial technical things, and then at the end, rule of law, justice, and governance. So this is the way, at the end, things have to be looked at in a crisis situation, because they are all existing at the same time. This is a bit complicated. Okay. Few critical elements. One is we have to learn from past experience. The work of Groupe URD has been doing a lot of evaluation and sharing that. So this is very important. And among these issues, one of the elements is the complexity of situation. When you are in front of a very complex situation, the classical response is make it simple. But that does not work. You cannot work with a simplified situation. You have to, if the real situation is very complicated. That's where we have developed what we call systemic analysis. So a complicated system is a system where you can do some organization through systemic approach. Do you know a bit of systemic approach? Does that sound something? Have you heard about? So a system is made of elements and relations between the different elements. So if it looks very complicated, what you have to do is identify the different elements and identify the relation between them. And then you understand the system. So it's not any more complicated. It's just an organized system, which is much better than a simplified system where you see nothing. The other element is all situations are evolving. So from the work on the situation you do that day, and that day, situation might have gone through many different formats. And often we have difficulties to understand the evolution of situation. Things are very dynamic all the time. Situation in Ukraine now is not the same as it was 4 months ago, and it's probably not the same it will be in 4 months. And we have to keep things, we have to be kept aware of those changes. If we don't do that, the program we have designed here, when we start to implement it here, it's not useful because situation has changed. So we have to. So there is this. There is a concept what we call relevance, which means adaptation to a situation. If you design a new program here, and situation has changed, the program is not anymore relevant. So you have to change. And this is something the aid system has a lot of problems to do. When we look at, for example, food and economic security, we see where, again, this is system analysis. So I was in front of something very complicated. How is the war affecting economic security of people? So I identify the different elements and identifies the relation between the different elements. And at the end, it's not that complicated. It functions, we understand how it functions. And this is, I think, systemic analysis is something very, very useful. Because it helps identifying the different elements, the different parameters, the different relations. So you know, if you change that, then what will be the repercussions? And it works very well. And then there are what we call the soft aspects of crisis, where you have to look at all the impacts on the society, on people, and it's sometimes it requires some sociologists and some anthropologists to do that. And that's why we are so happy to work with you.
Okay. What is LRRD?
So LRRD is linking relief, rehabilitation, and development. So it is a process that goes from humanitarian aid, where you distribute goodies, to action where, for example, you help the municipality and you have the Vodokanal to do the work. So it's how you go from relief to development.
Як пов'язані допомога і недержавна і державна допомога. Полегшення і
And this is something very, very important because it's a way you can either create sustainable post-crisis, or you can create a post-crisis which will be just the entry point for the next war. So this is a very important element. And of course, this has to be done in a very complex institutional setup where you have so many actors. At the center, you have the population. At the external part, you have the international donors, and then you have all those elements in between. And you have to deal with that.
What is the first element?
Donor. Oh, yeah. The one is donor government.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's a last French word left in the.
Це французьке слово.
Yeah, it's a donor agency. Sorry, sometimes there's one, but it's just to check if people are reading well. So humanitarian aid is taking place in that very complicated institutional setup. And it's very important to understand it, to see how it works. Well, just leave that. So for us, we said humanitarian aid need to develop 4 elements. Understand situations, the history, the cause of the conflict, or the cause of the disaster. Understand what are the needs of the population. Understand what are the existing capacities. And understand what are the existing constraints and difficulties. If you don't do those 4 analyses, you will not be able to work properly. So understand the situation, understand the needs, understand the capacities, and understand the constraints. One example. We look at a situation in Nikopol. Nikopol, close to the front line, to get the water. It's complicated because after the dam was broken, there's no more water in the place where Nikopol used to pump its water. So, and the other guys with their guns are just on the other side of the Dnieper. People need water. Capacities, you have a local Vodokanal, which has not many capacities. You have local treatment station, and you have a lot of And then you have a lot of the constraints. And the main constraint is the risk of droughts. So what they have done in Nicopol, they have created a small pumping station which is not vertical but horizontal. So it can go, so during the night, they push the pump, the water, until that. So it can fill the reservoirs during the night. So and they, of course, they take the thermic blanket to cover themselves. And they fill all the reservoirs of the city, and in the morning they take the pump back. So, situation, no water, landers, need water, capacity, imagination, and then they identify the solution, which is this horizontal pumping station. So this, for me, is a very interesting example on how they have been dealing with that. One of the elements is when you are here today, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. In fact, I was listening at at different canals of information. People don't know if they will attack Sumi tomorrow, they will attack Kharkiv tomorrow or not, and nobody knows. If Trump said, don't do that, will Putin say yes or no? Nobody knows. So we have to be ready for different types of scenarios. So we often do what we call multi-scenario planning. Peace tomorrow, peace in 1 month, war tomorrow, war in 1 month, and then all the elements. And we find the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, the most probable. So we have to we don't know what the future will be. So we have to identify the possible scenarios. And this helps to plan, to do some planning. So we know the future sometimes is certain. We know what we will do. So we can have linear thinking, planning will be tactical, and then we know that to manage the problem is through correction. Then we have time where the future is just probable. So we don't know exactly what will happen. We try to have a rational response. Sometimes the issue of a possible future, maybe it's possible, it will be like that. So we have to be creative, we have to do some scenario, and we have to have different kind of strategies for the different scenarios. And sometimes we just don't know. So if we don't know, we take any opportunity that comes. We have to deal with complexities, and we at least say, this is a minimum requirement we want to have. Otherwise, you will not be able. So in Ukraine, we are between possible and unknown. So maybe it's possible, but we don't know. And that's where the two last columns are important, how to think of possible scenario and how to develop strategy for each of them and be ready to grasp opportunities when they come. So that's one of the critical characteristics of the situation in Ukraine now. Of course, it comes to the issue of participation. How do we engage? How do we make sure that we talk to local actors, to local NGOs? This was a study we did with you. We did a study in Kharkiv on the work of the local volunteers. It was a very interesting study. And it showed that the local volunteers, they were very connected with the population, and they knew very well the needs. The international actors, they were not connected with the population. They didn't know the needs. And of course, it made things very complicated in the relations. Maybe you can talk a bit about the project.
Окей. Франсуа запропонував мені розповісти про проєкт, який ми проводили в минулому році за підтримки, за підтримки, за гроші Groupe URD. І була їх ідея, ми проводили це дослідження в межах проєкту «Взаємодопомога в умовах кризи». Проєкт, який був однією частиною, «Допомога в Харкові» був однією з частин 6 кейс-стадій, які проводились і розглядали декілька стихійних лих. Там, ну, зокрема, мені здається, лише те, що було в Україні, те, що було в Харкові, воно стосувалося, власне, війни, а те, що в інших країнах, це у Франції, в Африці, вони проводилися у зв'язку з стихійними лихами, наприклад, там повені, посуха, землетрус, землетрусу не було, землетрус не є стихійним лихом, якщо він на природі. Тобто, проблема голоду була, ну, те, що в Україні проводилось стосовно взаємодопомоги у Харкові. І ми опитували волонтерів, тобто надавачів цієї допомоги, і недержавного сектору, і державного сектора. Ми спілкувалися з представниками влади, волонтерських організацій, з індивідуальними волонтерами. Далі це були надзвичайники, і це були представники міжнародних організацій. Те, про що каже Франсуа, власне, про те, що найближчі до людей – це, звісно, волонтери, індивідуальні волонтери, а найдальше – це міжнародні організації. От Франсуа весь час відчуває ту ідею, що вони там зовні краще знають, аніж те, що знаємо ми. Проте про Харків я не можу такого сказати, бо міжнародні організації, вони у нас, представництво міжнародних організацій, вони тримають руку на пульсі і вони постійно комунікують із волонтерами, з місцевою владою для того, щоб збирати інформацію про те, в чому, чого люди потребують, і для того, щоб знаходити донорів для реалізації цих потреб. Тобто в даному випадку є налагоджений вже механізм, який допомагає, і ви знаєте, бо ви тут живете, під час прильотів, коли зночі приліт і страшні руйнування, на день ви просто можете там по тротуару проходити, ну, можливо, там, якщо дуже сильні руйнування, то ні, але комунальники разом з волонтерами, разом з міжнародними організаціями, вони приїжджають, вони прибирають усе це, ну і допомога, звісно, здійснюється. Ну, єдине, що від початку, на сьогоднішній день майже немає індивідуальних волонтерів, тому що волонтерська допомога, вона інституціоналізується і вона стає такою більш формалізованою, бо якщо в перші дні війни це власні кошти, там якісь друзі, знайомі щось передавали, тут одне з одним ділилися, то на сьогоднішній день це вже переходить на інший рівень, і міжнародні організації підключаються. Вони не одразу зайшли в Харків, тому що були певні заборони щодо нашого міста. На сьогоднішній день багато представниць міжнародних організацій тут присутні, вони допомагають, але вони і диктують правила гри. Тобто це умови звітності, яким категоріям надавати допомогу, яку саме можна допомогу надавати. Хоча потреби, інформацію про потреби вони збирають. Тобто, in general.
So the report will be coming very soon in English, French and Ukrainian.
Дуже скоро звіт з'явиться на сторінках Groupe URD 3 мовами. Можете прочитати англійською, можете прочитати французькою, буде і українською.
So this is very important element. How we make sure that we engage with the population and the local actors in humanity. This is one of the critical elements. It's sometimes discussed under the word localization of aid. So localization of aid is making aid local, which is very important, rather than making it from abroad. I spoke nearly 1 hour, and now it's time for questions.
Якщо є у вас запитання, будь ласка, Франсуа із задоволенням на них відповість. Можете українською, а можете за допомогою там Google-перекладача задати, попрактикуватися. Можливо, у когось є тих, хто по інший бік блакитних екранів знаходиться. Є запитання, можете піднімати руки. Я не бачу, на жаль, хто там сидить. Можливо, когось витягнути на запитання. Сидите і соромитесь.
And always remember that all questions are valid. Sometimes the response is a bit more complicated, but all questions are good. So don't hesitate, please ask.
Які запитання? Я не знаю. Хто бачить? Володимир Цапів немає тут? Вов?
And the same for the people, the colleagues on the screen.
Є? Володимире, я казала, що можна Франсуа задавати запитання, якщо у вас є, будь ласка. Не хоче.
So either I was very clear or I was very boring, if there's no question.
Без запитань взагалі нудно. Ні? А тут в аудиторії сидите.
Always the courageous one has to start. Who will be the courageous one to start?
Ага, хтось он вимкнувся, я не знаю, хтось там. Хто це? Відео навіть. Олег, у вас є запитання? О,
Так, добрий день. Є питання в мене, якщо Франсуа зможе на нього дати відповідь. Скажіть, будь ласка, от проблеми з водою питною в сільській місцевості, який опит там в інших країнах, як борються з цим в світі, там, як надати чисту воду людям в сільській місцевості?
I let ask you about the clear water which need provide to rural population.
For water.
Yeah. Clear water.
Clear water.
For rural.
Yeah, okay. I've been doing a lot of research on that in Ukraine, and this is a very important situation.
Олеже, Франсуа якраз досліджував цю проблему в Україні. Він з Франції не хоче розповідати, як він це робив, але в Україні розкаже.
So it depends very much of where you talk about. If you talk about the Odessa to Nikopol band, close to the river, close to the sea, you have a big problem because the underground water is salty and full of chemicals.
Якщо ви питаєте про оцей ось пояс, який внизу у нас ходить Одеса, Миколаїв, Херсон, то там внизу дуже багато соленої води і багато хімічними елементами.
So
Не дуже добрими.
So there, one of the solution is through inverse osmosis system. Reverse osmosis.
Одна з проблем – це інвестувати у яку систему, Франсуа? I don't understand what system.
Does anybody know reverse osmosis?
Reverse osmosis.
Reverse.
Це він каже, мабуть, про зворотній осмос системи очистки.
Yeah. So this is very appropriate to areas where the content of the water is full of chemicals. Then you have other part of Ukraine, for example, if you go east.
English, I don't speak English, and you can talk to me.
Okay.
Okay. I will translate.
Okay. So for areas, so in some part of Ukraine, you need to have a system that will eliminate the chemical element.
Дуже багато хімічними елементами. Так, частина України. Як у Франції? How this problem solved in French?
In France, we don't have this type of problem because we don't have the. But in fact, it's the tools. It's the same system for seawater treatment. For the treatment of the water from the sea.
Тут проблема, тому що вода йде, у Франції нема таких проблем, а тут вода йде з моря, і в цьому найбільша проблема.
So this is one type of place, one type of situation in Ukraine. This is one type of situation.
Один із типів situation, тобто один із типів ситуацій, це не єдина ситуація. Так.
So if you go, for example, to the north of Kharkiv and to the closer to Sumy and closer, and even if you go to Uzhgorod, to the Carpathian.
Якщо ви підете по північному поясу від Сум до Закарпаття,
there, most of the time, the water is from wells or from canals from the river.
Там же вода не з моря йде, а з підземних вод і з річок.
But there, the problem is biological contamination. Biological contamination. Yeah, pollution. Contamination. Biological pollution. So there you have to have water treatment that deal with biological problems like virus and bacteria.
А тут якраз проблеми пов'язані з бактеріями.
So to respond to your question, I would say which place you want to consider, and then we can see the situation at that place and what are the problems to be dealt with. So to respond to this question,
відповідаючи на це запитання, I understand, yeah.
I have to see what is the location he wants to have.
Франсуа питає, яка частина вас, власне, турбує? Північ чи південь?
Якщо чесно, мене турбує схід, а саме Харківщина, там, наприклад. І хотілося б вточнити своє питання. У нас є велика проблема з нітратами, які з полів потрапляють там в підземні води і потрапляють до колодязів, до скважин. І у людей виникають проблеми зі здоров'ям на цьому фоні. І мені цікаво, як саме держави, там інші держави борються з цією проблемою, бо в нас дуже складно кожній людині, там це потрібно провести аналізи і установити там індивідуальну систему фільтрації кожному. Як в інших там цивілізованих та нецивілізованих странах борються з цим?
Олег asked about nitrates, which from the field, from
fertilizer.
Yeah, and how they solve this problem in other countries, not in Ukraine.
Okay.
Maybe you have this problem.
Yeah. So when there is a high pollution of nitrate, the only solution is through a system like reverse osmosis.
Тільки таке рішення – це очищення.
Because
А де ви будете?
or you have a very complicated system for the precipitation of nitrate. So you need a big station where you can have nitrate precipitation with chemicals.
Встановлюються ці станції on the river.
You can have, so you have the contaminated water goes to a station where it's treated, where the nitrates are kept by other chemicals to be eliminated.
Там, де витікається вода, встановлюються станції, вони очищуються.
Just try to find a name of something.
Зараз Франсуа знайде, як називається ця станція. Олег вирішив продовжувати екологічне право, я так розумію, так. Або екологічні виклики.
Yeah, so it's either through reverse osmosis, or you have electrical exchange. So the nitrates can be eliminated by electrical system, ion exchange. That's the main system. But in the countryside, it's difficult. So I think you need to have a small systems, and reverse osmosis is sometimes the best.
Ну, в сільській місцевості це дуже складно встановити таку штуку. Це що
And
пропонує станцію цю.
the other system is water distillation. Distillation. Like you boil the water, and then the nitrates stay here, and then you have the water, the boiled water, which become again water in another place. So you boil here, then you have the vapor.
This is a mechanism of the station.
It is a distillation, but it's very complicated.
Франсуа каже про процес дистилізації цієї води за допомогою
Distillation.
Так, I understand.
But the best for small rural communities is reverse osmosis.
Але кращий для невеличких громад це власне оце
Reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis.
Я зрозумів, про що він каже, дякую.
Ні. Зворотний осмос воно називається. Очищення води, те, про що ми говорили. Зворотний осмос воно називається.
Так, зрозуміло, дякую. Дякую за відповідь.
Дякую вам, Олеже.
Дякую, Олег. Any other questions? Maybe less technical, more technical, as you want.
Not technical. Humanitarian aid. Ще хтось, так? 2 чоловіка. О, супер, давайте. О, Володимир, дякую. Почув мій заклик. Вова.
Good afternoon, audience. Yes, I have 2 questions. And what are the biggest legal or bureaucratic problems that make it hard for international humanitarian organization to work in Ukraine? And how is the government trying to solve them? And who finances all your projects?
Okay, bureaucratic system. There is always bureaucracy, and the question is how you identify the bureaucratic problems and how to solve them. In fact, most of the bureaucratic problems that have been encountered are related to the fact that the aid system did not understand how the Ukrainian society and administration functions. If you understand it properly, you find the right way to manage it. If you don't understand, you try to go your direction and then you have a problem and then you don't know how to do. So understanding the administrative process is very important to avoid bureaucracy. Of course, there is always a system for custom, for example. If you bring aid to Ukraine, you have to have the custom clearance, which means you have to have a list of what you bring, the quantity, the quality, etc., etc. So, but this is not that complicated. It's just a procedure. If you follow the procedure correctly, you have no problems. I've been working with an organization who are now bringing, I think, 300 trucks of aid in Ukraine. And they know very well how to do, and it's easy. You just have to make sure that you fill the forms correctly and you inform correctly. So if you don't do it, then you have problem. So that's one element. The second element is, of course, the government wants to coordinate. Coordinate at the national, at the oblast, and at the municipal level. Here again, there are procedures. If you follow the procedures, things are quite easy. If you don't follow them, you might have problems linked to people in the bureaucracy who are not happy. So again, following correctly the system, it's a good mechanism, good way to avoid bureaucratic problems. Of course, there are always cases. You have always, like in any administration, you have unprofessional people, you have corrupt people, you have people who don't know what to do, and that can create problems. So it's very important to be ready to discuss with the source of problem to solve it. But Ukraine is no more complicated than many other countries, to tell you the truth. In fact, even things are very clear, procedures are very clear. Most of the time, it works well. And most of the case I know where there have been problems is people have not been following correctly the procedures. So that was my answer to your first question. And the second question, can you repeat?
Друге запитання, повторіть, будь ласка, Володимире.
Yes, if it isn't secret, who finances all your projects?
So projects have been financed by different donors. So for example, the European Commission, the American, the French, the British. So you have many countries. You have also private foundations who are supporting projects. And then you have also individuals who are giving money to NGOs for the work. So it's many different types of donors are supporting humanitarian aid in Ukraine. Maybe that's an important element for all of you. Each of the problem with the donors is, first, very often they don't coordinate between each other. So the people who are giving money are sometimes the source of problems, because everybody wants to go to Mykolaiv. So everybody gives money to Mykolaiv, and at the end, Mykolaiv doesn't know what to do with all this money. Because the donors, they don't talk. If they talk, they say, well, okay, there are already 3 donors for Mykolaiv, maybe we can have 1 for Kherson. But if they don't talk to each other, we have a problem. That's the first element. The second element is, and it came very clear during the study, each of the donors has his own bureaucratic procedure for project writing, project accountability, project reporting. And this creates a lot of difficulties for the aid actors, because for one project, you might have to write 3 different reports. And this is sometimes very stupid. Did that answer your questions?
Yes, last questions. Which countries are most interested in supporting Ukraine, and how will this benefit both sides in the future?
Well, I know the European Union is very interested. The European Commission is very interested to support Ukraine. I know my own country is also very interested, France, and we have been pushing very much in Paris for that. I know that Germany, UK, also Canada. We don't know anymore about America, because sometimes they are interested, sometimes they are not interested, sometimes they are with Ukraine, sometimes they are against Ukraine. Nobody knows what's happening in the brain of Mr. Trump. But I think the others, they are interested. some countries are confronted with complicated internal discussion on that. Like, for example, Poland, and some countries are not interested at all, like Hungary and Slovakia. So it very much depends. But among those who are interested, I know that the EU is very committed. And in the EU, France, Germany, and European, but not EU, UK is also very interested to support Ukraine.
And about future. Volodymyr asked about future.
I hope in the future they will still be very interested. I think it's very important that we, as we have been discussing a couple of times during that presentation, that even when the war stops, there will be a lot of needs for Ukraine. Many cities have been destroyed. Many agricultural systems have been destroyed. The mining would cost a lot of money. Managing the psychological trauma of many Ukrainian men and women would be very, very important. So it's critical that the solidarity does not stop at the end of the war, that it continues, and individuals like me will push for that. There was another question. There was another hand.
Ще є запитання, Володимире?
No, thank you for answers and interesting conference. Thank you very much.
А хто другий тримає руку?
Я тримаю руку, Антон. Так. Мене чути?
Так.
Так. Всіх вітаю на лекції. У мене є таке запитання. Тобто, зважаючи на те, що зростає кількість, так, і різноманіття гравців в гуманітарному секторі, також унікальний досвід України, який є, на вашу думку, найважливіший урок, який Україна може запропонувати міжнародній спільноті гуманітарній щодо ефективності, координації і взаємодії між всіма суб'єктами?
Which the main lessons can Ukraine propose to international society after this war about coordination, about
This is very good question. I wrote a couple of reports about that. The first element is that Ukraine underline the importance of understanding what is a society at war. And understanding that in a society at war, there is a mobilization of everybody.
Перший урок – це Україна дасть зрозуміти, як суспільству мобілізуватися під час війни.
And it's very important to understand that, because this is what is in the brain of everybody.
Це дуже важливо, і це має бути у кожного в голові.
The second element is the municipal level, the local level administration is a central element for the coordination.
Другий момент – це муніципальна влада, державна влада має бути центральним елементом у координації взаємодії.
The third level is we often forget to take into account all the work of the volunteers.
І ми не маємо третій урок, це ми не маємо взагалі списувати з рахунку усіх волонтерів.
You have
Локальних, місцевих.
in Ukraine, but also in many other situations, you have an enormous mobilization of volunteers.
Дуже багато в Україні неформальних волонтерів.
And the international aid system does not understand that.
А міжнародна система допомоги, вона цього не розуміє.
That's why we have our project on mutual help,
Ну і зараз ссилається на той проект, про який я вже казала.
where we did case studies in Africa, in Latin America, even in France, to demonstrate the role of those volunteers.
Дуже багато проєктів в Африці, в Латинській Америці демонструють дуже важливу роль волонтерів. About communication between various actors.
Yeah. And of course, nothing functions if there is no understanding of good communication between the different actors.
Ніхто не знає nothing.
Nothing can work
Так,
if there is no good coordination and good dialogue.
Ніхто не може сказати, який буде краща координація і робота.
Then we have very specific problems linked to Ukraine. Specific issues.
Проблема. Україна має специфічну проблему.
Many aid actors came to Ukraine. They didn't understand what is a modern society with a functioning state in a post-Soviet system when the climate can be cold.
Тобто дуже багато таких нюансів, чому не розуміють взагалі міжнародні організації, тому що сучасне українське суспільство воно має певні ознаки, далі це пострадянське минуле.
And can be cold. Can be cold weather, very cold. Очень холодно.
І тому що дуже холодно.
So many of them came from Africa. Very hot.
Багато з тих, які приходять до Африки, їм дуже жарко.
So very hot climate, very badly functioning administration.
Дуже поганий клімат, дуже погана взаємодія з адміністрацією.
No real industry.
Майже немає індустрії, промисловості.
And they arrive in Ukraine where there is a functioning administration, a very strong industry, and sometimes can be very cold.
Функціонуюча адміністрація, сильна промисловість і дуже холодно. I don't understand the connection between
Cold. Because many of them didn't know what to do for heating. Many of them didn't know how to do for shelter. Because for them, shelter is to put some tarpaulin. You don't understand tarpaulin when it's -15, it's nothing. Они не понимают, что делать, когда очень холодно. Потому что они нормально не работают, когда очень жарко.
Франсуа дуже добре порається, мені здається, мовою, яка нам є зрозуміла.
And in many places where people used to work, there is normally no electricity.
А в багатьох країнах також,
No, outside of Ukraine.
Але не в Україні, багато працюють навіть без електрики. В деяких країнах немає електрики навіть.
So in Africa, many places, or very little electricity.
Наприклад, в Африці.
Here, part of the Russian war was against electricity.
Тут стоїть бар'єр з Росією, так?
So the Russian war was to destroy electricity.
Господи, російське вторгнення, воно зруйнувало електромережі.
And in the aid system, nobody knew what to do.
І система взаємодопомоги не знає, що ж з цим робити.
So they brought all kind of generators.
Вони покупають генератори.
But very few understood that you have to work with that station and with that station and with that station.
Але мало хто розуміє, як взагалі пов'язати оці різні станції.
Because it's the first time they were confronted with a modern society depending on electricity, where electricity was the target of the enemy.
І ось чому проколот, каже Франсуа, тому що він каже, в сучасному суспільстві, де взагалі дуже багато запитано пов'язано з електрикою, взагалі багато чого не можна зробити. Тобто в Африці там вони без електрики живуть і допомагати їм легше. А коли у нас смартфони, гаджети, це вже зрозуміло, що мій фрівольний переклад, але коли в нас це є все, вони не знають, як нам допомагати, бо просто дати нам пледи, то ще не допомога.
Another interesting lessons is the field of health. Health.
Health?
Health.
У нас є.
Health.
People. У нас є.
I saw that. Oh, health. Ay.
Франсуа. Це здоров'я.
In Ukraine, you have two health pyramids.
В Україні ми маємо дві піраміди здоров'я.
You have the military pyramid and then you have the civilian pyramid. Military pyramid.
Збройна піраміда або піраміда збройних сил.
So you have the military and civilian.
Піраміда військова і піраміда цивільна.
So the military pyramid, at the top you have first aid.
В піраміді військовій на вершині, на верхушці знаходиться допомога.
And all soldiers are trained how to help each other in case of wound. All soldiers are trained.
І всі також тренують, вони тренуються постійно, військові.
And then you have the evacuation to the first health post. Evacuation.
What about
Evacuation of the wounded people. You take them from...
Вони евакуюють людей.
And then you have second post, third post, fourth post.
Через пости.
So the military have established a very sophisticated health pyramid. Very complicated, very sophisticated.
Sophisticated?
Yeah.
Філософський. Філософи. Sophisticated. Я не побачила, хто це запитання задав? Витончений. Складний. Sophisticated, складний in your context.
Yeah. Connie?
Складний.
Складні піраміди за здоров'я.
Так.
So for the civilian, it's not as sophisticated.
От серед цивільних не так складно, тут два варіанти, або складний, або витончений, sophisticated.
So if you have wounded people with after a bombing.
Якщо ви якщо ви маєте справу з людьми, які постраждали від бомбардування.
Yeah. So CESU comes, the fire brigade,
ДСНС.
and they come and just they evacuate them immediately to
Так, зрозуміло. Тепер увесь контекст. Тобто, якщо щось із військовими відбувається, то військові взяли свого побратима і витягнули його з поля бою. Якщо з цивільними щось відбувається, то вони телефонують ДСНС, ДСНСники приїжджають, евакуюють.
So this is for military management of wounded people and civilian management of wounded people. And then you have the normal public health. Yeah, we are entering into something very technical. Public. Yeah.
А є ще громадське здоров'я, public health.
So if you have a disease, if you are sick, how can you get treated?
Якщо я хворий, якщо я погано себе почуваю, як мені можна взагалі виправитися?
Knowing that many of the very good doctors have been sent to the front line.
Тому що дуже багато лікарів взагалі знаходяться на лінії фронту.
So you have in the same time different health systems in place, and this is quite complicated to manage.
І в такій складній системі дуже важко управляти. Я так розумію, що Франсуа нам якраз показував, Антон, все. Справа в тому, що Франсуа, я так розумію, у такий спосіб хотів би показати складність системи взаємодії. Це образне взагалі розуміння взаємодії між акторами гуманітарної допомоги. Тобто через здоров'я Франсуа показував, що є різні гравці, які мають свою мету і взагалі свою різну реакцію, і відповідно це дуже складно. Антон, я вас запам'ятав.
So it requires special strategy to deal with those different systems at the same time.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other question from all those ladies? Please.
Innovation, in your opinion, what is the future of humanitarian aid, or how humanitarian aid can change or evolve in the coming years?
At the Ukraine level or worldwide? Okay, so the humanitarian system has gone through a big shock, which is the end of the American funding. Globally, worldwide. And it realizes that it has to change, to adapt to a situation where needs are big and money gets smaller. They have to identify how to become better, how to do better and more with less money. And this will require a big change in mind. Bureaucracy has to be reduced some organization started like that. Small bureaucracy, big impact on the beneficiaries. And after years and years and years and years and years and years, they become like that. Big bureaucracy, very little to the beneficiaries. This has to change. It's not anymore possible. So they move from there to there, they will have to go back to that. Very small there and very big for the beneficiary. So that's one element. In the case of Ukraine, of course, we have to look again. I mentioned the multi-scenario planning. There are different scenarios. One is peace is next week. And one is peace is maybe in 10 years. And we have to develop strategy for each of these scenarios. Those who will be able to develop those strategies will have to be working very closely with Ukrainian structure, with Ukrainian volunteers, with Ukrainian NGO, with Ukrainian universities, with Ukrainian administration, to be very, very, very relevant. Those who cannot leave the Golden Tower in New York or even in Kiev and go to Kharkiv and to the village in Donetsk, they will die. They will disappear. I would say that I'm very glad we have this this discussion, because it's for me one of the critical elements would be to create better link between the international aid structures and the local actors, and of course to have people like you who will be more and more able to understand the two levels. You will be the bridge. And I think having bridges is very important. So be happy bridges. This is very important.
There's thanks maybe, Francois, for your lecture. It was very interesting.
So most of the documents we wrote on humanitarian aid in Ukraine are available on the Groupe URD website. Some of them are in Ukrainian language. We try to get some of them translated. Others are in French and English. So you can look at them. There is on water, there is on energy, there is on different type of subject, global humanitarian. So you go on www.urd.org. You go to the English page, or if you want to read in French, you can go. Then you go to the map. And then on the map, you can type Ukraine, and you have access to all our documents.
Тільки це Франсуа запропонував, де можна знайти взагалі посилання на ці звіти, і там звіти, які або дослідження, які проводилися в Україні, вони будуть і українською публікуватися. Франсуа прорекламував трошки URD Group, єдине, що вони пишуться Groupe не як в англійській мові, а ще наприкінці «і». Тобто це не помилка, це вони таку торгову марку собі зробили. Тобто можете забивати просто Groupe URD і мати доступ до публікацій, якщо у вас буде щось цікаве.
It's all for you.
Все для вас.
And thank you for being with us. And as I say, Kharkiv is nearly my second city now.
How was the first?
Provence, West. And you know, what I'm trying, I will probably prepare a small book on Kharkiv based on photos of the wall painting. So there are so many nice wall painting with birds and flowers. So I made many photos, and I will try to make a small book on Kharkiv painting.
Це Франсуа розписує, як він полюбляє Харків, що у нього фото на маленьку книжку вистачає. От він зараз гортає, це бачу лише я. Але так, фотки різні і цікаві.
All those photos.
Перемога, так. Синичка, перемога.
It's so beautiful. So I will try to make a small book on Kharkiv.
А ще Франсуа любить насвистувати червону калину. Франсуа, у лузі червона калина.
So that's my contribution to Kharkiv. Good.
Дякуємо тоді, дякуємо всім, хто доєднався до нас. Перемоги нам, бо Франсуа все вірить. Ми також.
So thank you to you, and I will still be coming to Kharkiv regularly.
Окей.
Okay.